is for the people listening is you got to feed yourself every day. You got to feed yourself with positivity so that way you can feed others. We got to talk to ourselves now more than ever instead of listen to ourselves, because those negative thoughts are not coming from you. We got a lot of negative thoughts coming in, and people often think they're coming from them, but they're not. Why? How do I know? Because you would never choose to have a negative thought. And just because you have a negative thought doesn't mean you have to believe it.
Welcome back to another episode of The Burn. Now, when I say I wanted this to be like one of the first episodes, like this needed to be one of the first episodes, but here's what is so interesting, and this is a man who has taught me this, is everything happens in life at the right time because it's influenced from something that's up above. And I know we're going to go really, really deep from a biblical standpoint today, from a religion-based standpoint today, because that's how Jon Gordon and I connected. And you guys probably thought, oh, this is going to be awesome. They're going to talk about all their great sports teams that they work with. And they're going to talk about speaking. And I think Jon's up to 500 books now, and every single one is a bestseller in 2 days. And you're going to talk about all that. But we're actually going to take a different turn, because what many people don't know is that Jon Gordon, and he has remained so humble in this, he has been such an amazing mentor and influence on my life. It's incredible. And I know he's going to give up that to somebody else when I introduce you. You got to give me a second. But we met in February of 2008, and we were a fast connection. We met through some friends. I'm going to get right to it. But a week after we met, he called me and he challenged me in my relationship with God. And Jon said to me, I'll never forget, I'm pulling into Culpeppers, this little place where you get chicken wings for an appointment, and a random number comes in, and normally you don't answer them. And I answer, he says, Jon Gordon. I'm thinking, Jon Gordon's calling. What's he calling for? And he says, hey, I want to have an open conversation with you. You know, you and I have very similar backgrounds. You lost your mother. I lost my mother. You were born Jewish. I was born Jewish. You were bar mitzvahed. I was bar mitzvahed. And I heard that you struggle in your relationship with God. And he said, there's a daily prayer that I'm going to share with you. And he goes, you could hang up this phone and say, I'm crazy and never do anything with the prayer. Or you could do something with the prayer. And I did something with the prayer, and it's, God, what is my use for your purpose, and guide me towards that purpose. Jesus, if you are who you say you are, show me the signs. I'm open to receiving this if it is meant to be. And Jon, your courage to make that phone call changed my life. You talk about the burn. You know, I had never spoken to anybody outside of Northwestern Mutual. I'd never written a book. I'd never coached anybody. We had never had a child. I mean, there are all these things that happened when I finally said, I was not trucking in this sand alone. Thank you that God has brought somebody else into my life to influence me, to mentor me, to shape how I think. And so probably not the introduction that everybody expected, but you know me, I'm an emotional dude, so you knew I was going to go there. Jon, man, I love you. I appreciate you. And I just can never thank you enough for the influence you've had on my life.
Man, thanks so much, Ben. That means the world to me. And just to see your journey, to see you grow is an incredible feeling. It's been amazing to watch the influence that you have on people's lives. And so we both know that God is the primary number one reason why we do what we do. We know that he is our strength. With God, right, we are stronger than on our own. By ourselves, we are fearful. With God, we are faithful. And so through God, we're able to accomplish so much more. So I always say, like, my faith in God doesn't make life easier. It makes me stronger. And I know that my faith has changed me. It has challenged me. It has made me who I am today. And I just had to tell you that day, because I knew that God was guiding me on my path. When I saw you and I met you, I knew that he had a special purpose for you as well. And you can't know your purpose without a relationship with the one who created you for a purpose. And so everyone is searching for their purpose, but what they're really searching for is God. When you find God, you find your purpose. You found God, you found your purpose, you found your strength, and then you found this ability to influence others in amazing ways. So it's incredible. It's not like, though, I don't want people to think, okay, you believe in God and then your life turns out awesome. That's not how it works. We have both faced a lot of adversity and challenges and obstacles along the way. But it is my faith that helps me overcome the fear. It makes me love more and love deeper. Through a challenge like this, what we're going through in this country, right? We can bring the love in our heart to others, and love thy neighbor as we love thyself. And so as we love our neighbors, we are able to love in a way that we're meant to love, that God has called us to love. It's not like, God didn't say, love only the neighbors who look just like you. He says, love your neighbors, all of them. And to me, that's what we're called to do.
I'm gonna take a step back, and then we're gonna go right to that point with what's going on in this country, because I think it's so important, especially the opportunity that we have to visit with so many people every single day, to share some perspective. But I want to meet everybody where they are. I think naturally sometimes if you're challenged by what you see on the news, maybe right now you're challenged from how you were brought up in your home. I was blessed to be raised in a house where all I ever knew was that you treat everybody the same, you love everybody the same. And I was blessed in that way. And now I pass that blessing on to my kids, and it's been wonderful. But I think it's important that you surround yourself in life with people who challenge you. And I'm going to bring up two instances where you've challenged me. Number one, it's been just the challenge of having a mentor like you in my life. But number two, it was a direct challenge. And the reason why I want to do this, to then set the table for the conversation, is because it's okay to be extremely uncomfortable when people challenge you and they come from a place of love. And it's okay, just because you've been a certain way for 25 years, 35 years, 40 years, 60 years, you can still change if you choose to change. And I know with the power and the strength of God, you can find that change. And so the first thing I want to say is, when I wrote my first book, Fight the Good Fight, it was all about my mom. And if you remember, there was the rounds instead of chapters. And I called Jon and I said, gosh, Jon, like, the book is not selling. Why is this book not selling? And you have a good mentor when your mentor's response is, Ben, I love you, and I'm going to be honest with you. You wrote an autobiography, and nobody knows who in the world you are. And I think back to that, and I go, what a blessing I had somebody like you in my life. Not somebody who goes, oh, it's going to start to sell, you're going to do great. And you encouraged me to change how I communicated and to change how I thought. You encouraged me to laugh on the stage. I mean, when I met you, we would have been doing this, welcome to the Burn, I'm Ben Newman, and I wouldn't have smiled, I wouldn't have laughed. And so you've always been honest.
Remember when I told you to start using some humor because you're a funny guy? I said, you got to start sharing some jokes up there because you're funny. Like, go up there and say, hey, I'm an emotional guy. I cried extreme home makeovers.
So it's like, there's so much that you've taught me, but like, you had to be willing to go to that uncomfortable place. So number one, whether it's the mentor that you haven't really let in, maybe you let that mentor in. Sometimes it might be the mentors you've never met. I mean, I can't imagine how many people, Jon, you mentor. Jon Wooden was a mentor to me. I never met Jon Wooden. And so that's number one. And number two is to find people who stretch you to do things that maybe at one point in time you didn't think were possible. And I thank you for that example. So with that being said, I know some of you, I want you to take yourself to a place where you're uncomfortable. Maybe you were raised a certain way and you're hearing messages and you want to change. And Jon, I want us to go there. So if you were to take this opportunity to mentor the people who we're spending time with right now, and to really speak to what's going on in the world, what type of a positive message, what would you share to really challenge them to get uncomfortable, to take action? Because that's what we need, in my opinion.
I mean, we need to stay positive. It may sound cliche, but it's true. And when I say positive, I don't mean Pollyanna positive. This is not about seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. This is knowing that you have the power to overcome the thorns. We're not positive because life is easy. We're positive because life is hard. And so my big message right now is win today. Don't worry about the future. Just win each day. You got to show up and win today. Control what you control. Win today. Stay positive in this moment. If we win today, we win tomorrow, we win the next day, we will create a great future. But we cannot focus on what would have been, right? I was crushing 2020. I know you were as well. It was like January, February, early March. I mean, best year I've ever had.
Same here.
And then the world stopped. And then when that happened, I went towards the negative at first. I'm going to be honest, man. I went a little negative. As you know, I grew up in a Jewish Italian family, a lot of food, a lot of guilt. So I naturally go towards the negative. And I said, is this going to help me create my future? Is this attitude going to help me help others create their future? No. So I knew right then and there, I had to find this eternal hope, this ray of optimism and belief. And I made a decision right there that I was going to be a light for others, that I was going to stay positive every single day. And I was going to just use this time to make a difference in the lives of others and not worried about the future. And it's amazing what has come out of this. It's amazing the challenges that have led to opportunities. But the key is for the people listening is you got to feed yourself every day. You got to feed yourself with positivity so that way you can feed others. We got to talk to ourselves now more than ever instead of listen to ourselves, because those negative thoughts are not coming from you. We got a lot of negative thoughts coming in, and people often think they're coming from them, but they're not. Why? How do I know? Because you would never choose to have a negative thought. You would never choose one. Would you choose one, Ben? I wouldn't choose one.
No.
No. So where are they coming from? Consciousness. It's a spiritual place. It's a spiritual battle. And there is an enemy. He's known as the father of lies. And he's always filling your mind and your heart and your soul with these negative thoughts, with these doubts, with these fears. And just because you have a negative thought doesn't mean you have to believe it. Don't believe the lies. The key is to speak truth to the lies. And that's what I've been doing. The truth is, great things are going to come out of this. The truth is, you work hard, you put your head down, you will be stronger, and you will create something good on the other side of this. The truth is, we got to survive this time. We got to advance during this time. We got to adapt. And on the other side of this, we're going to thrive. You know, we do leadership training. So we had to cancel a lot of our events or move them or reschedule them. But we've done a virtual event the other day, and we had 150 people sign up for our virtual leadership training. We have another one this month, already have 40 people signed up for this month. An event, an initiative that we would have never had. And now we are actually adapting, growing from it. And it's something we will do for forever going forward. Now, we're going to still have our physical events when they come back, but we've actually adapted and created something that will make us stronger, better, and also help others in the process. So these are things that you have to actually think about and be intentional about when you're going through a difficult time. Don't just say, you know what, my year's going to suck. Doc Rivers told me this yesterday. I love this. I interviewed Doc on my podcast, and Doc said, you know, he goes, everyone thinks like the year's over already. Everyone's acting like it's over. It's June. We're done with the first half. It's halftime. We still have another half to go. We can win the game, John. We got to go win the game. And I think that should be our mindset. We got to win the game. Let's make the second half great. And I know that we were like, okay, we've had the COVID-19. Now we've had the whole, we've had all the riots and everything that's going on. That's been a very challenging time for our country. We're experiencing that. It's very difficult. The protests, the riots, by the way, I'm sure you and I both agree that the protest needs to happen, that we're dealing with issues that really need to be addressed right now. We don't need violence in the protest. We don't need violence to come out of that. My dad was a former, was a police officer. He passed away a few years ago. So I don't want to see policemen shot. I also don't want to see innocent people of color actually lose their lives as a result of bad police officers. So you could be both. Like, everyone's acting like you have to be on one side of the other in the argument. You could be both. You can be pro law enforcement and for them, and yet also still believe in the protest. But what's happening is these protests are actually being infiltrated by really bad people who want to see bad and create anarchy and create problems. So they have nothing to do with the protest. So they're sabotaging the topic. They're sabotaging the issue that needs to be discussed. And again, that goes back to spiritually. There is an enemy that fills us with, back to that, negative thoughts, lies, and then it also is filling our world that is trying to divide us. 5 Ds that will sabotage us. And these are the 5 Ds the enemy uses to try to sabotage us and bring us down. And they are doubt. There's a lot of doubt right now. Distortion, lies. There's a lot of lies going on. Discouragement. We don't give up because it's hard. We give up because we get discouraged. Distraction. There's a lot of distractions happening. And when you're distracted, it's the enemy of greatness. And then there's division. And we can see the division playing out right now. So how do we overcome them? We trust. We speak truth to the lies, as I said. We encourage instead of allowing discouragement to set in. We focus on what matters most, our relationships. You and I have a great relationship. We focus on our relationships with our friends, with our family, with people we don't even know, and have these great conversations to talk about race, to talk about how we can come together, to talk about getting better, to talk about improvement, what needs to happen, to really understand and listen. That's what matters most. And then that brings about unity. Instead of division, we have unity. And love is what wins. Love wins. Love overcomes fear. It casts out fear, and love wins. So ultimately, the more we can bring love to a situation, the more we'll overcome. Now, is it going to be messy in the process? Is love messy sometimes? Yes, my wife and I will fight. We'll have difficult conversations. We'll almost even get divorced a number of times. And yet through it all, we'll build a stronger relationship. The love will shine through, and we'll be even stronger together. We had a book called Relationship Grit coming out at the end of August. And that
Congrats on
stands
that.
for,
Awesome.
yeah, GRIT stands for God, resolve, invest together. You got to make God the center of your marriage. You got to make sure you resolve to stick together through the tough times, through the challenges. She almost left me years ago. She should have left. She didn't, thank God. I stayed, she stayed. We got stronger together. And now we have an incredible relationship because we resolved to stick together. And then you got to invest in the relationship, and you got to do it together. When you do it together and both are involved and both are invested, then you can truly make a great relationship. And that's what we have to do as a society and as a country. We got to have relationship grit as a country.
Yeah, one final question, because I think this will be a great way to really help leave people in a better place with action, positive action, to be a positive catalyst for change. So I had a conversation with one of the football players we work with yesterday, and he said, he says to me, he goes, all white people aren't bad. All black people aren't bad. All cops aren't bad. He goes, and you know what drives me crazy? He goes, there's a difference between protesting and looting. He goes, why does everybody try to bring everything together? The protesters are the looters. All white people are bad. All black people are bad. All cops are bad. And he goes, I wish people could just go one relationship, one situation at a time. So the way that I thought about that was, what's one controllable? Because I believe in a one day at a time, win the day mentality as well. And I said, I can control one conversation at a time. The person who was raised, and I've challenged people. You could go back to talking to some of my high school teachers to where there was division in our high school. It was awful. We had a white side of the commons, a black side of the commons, and the athletes were the only ones who crossed over. I mean, it was awful. And I was fighting for it then. Other athletes and friends on the team, we were all fighting for the change. It didn't change. And so this has been going on for so long, but I think we have to have courage the way that you had courage with me. I look at it and say, it's one conversation at a time. It's having the courage to have your voice, whether it's a soft voice, a loud voice. So how would you leave people on this issue of what action can you take? Because I think some people, this is going to last 2 days and 3 days and 5 days. Coronavirus we won't be talking about that, but we're going to be talking about racism for a long time to come. This is not an overnight fix. So how do you take that person who struggled, or what do you do? And what would your message be to them?
I had great conversations with Doc Rivers about this, and we actually talked about race, which was really cool. We talked about it with Emmanuel Ocho, who I talked to the other day, who's put out an incredible video about understanding his perspective and understanding what it's like to be Black in America and what that's like every day. We had a great conversation the other day. Rennie Curran, who's one of the speakers who speaks for me at times when I can't speak. He was a Georgia football player, a superstar. We talked the other day as well. And the thing is, I just didn't start talking to these guys now. Like I've as you have, I've talked to these guys for years. Like they're my friends. I've talked to NBA players who get pulled over by cops quite often. And when Doc Rivers is getting pulled over by cops often, and throughout his life, and he's Doc Rivers, imagine if you're just, an everyday African-American, and what's going to happen to you and what's happening to you in your life. So the more you could understand what it's like to be in their shoes, you can't feel it because you've never been through it. You really can't truly fathom what it's like until you actually have to do it. But to try to understand and to understand their perspective and see where they're coming from, then you can have an education, you can have an awareness. And I think that's the first place to start. That's what Emmanuel and I discussed. We talked about just have the conversation. So seek out someone you can have a conversation with and ask them what it's like. Say, teach me. I want to know. I want to understand. Because I have an understanding, an awareness for years. So I truly get this issue because I've had a lot of these conversations already. Speaking with a lot of NFL teams, NBA teams, you name it, I've had a lot of these conversations. So you could truly understand what it's like. But I had the courage to ask and talk about it and have those conversations and really understand. And the more you understand, then you can really then take action. And that's going to be from a policy standpoint, we have to take action. That's going to be in our schools, in our businesses, in our communities, we have to take action. It's going to be, again, it's not like you solve things at the national level. You really do solve things one community at a time, one school at a time, one football team at a time, one conversation at a time. That is how you create change. My dad was a New York cop, so I also understand the mindset of a police officer too. Like, these are guys who are fighting crime every single day. So they're battling for their survival. So they look at the world and they see the world as out to get them. And when you are just in the trenches every day, you have a very narrow focus. So they're not having this big picture focus that we are all seeing. They're seeing a narrow focus. And so then you could start to have this skewed mindset that's a narrow focus. And my dad, as a New York cop, saw the world as out to get him. And you're battling for survival. And you make one mistake and you're dead. And you make one mistake and someone else is dead. That is a lot of responsibility. So what do we need to do there? We need some serious training. We need to really improve training in police departments, in police officers, awareness training, perspective training, stress training. So many of them, and I've talked to a lot of police chiefs who have asked me to come in and give talks, are dealing with a lot of stress and a lot of negativity. That was a long answer.
You know what, but it's incredible. And what I want to do is I want to encourage everybody as we wrap up. And I'm so thankful for our relationship and your example and your intentionality and your focus. And you have no idea how much it impacts me. I want everybody to think back to how we started 2008, February, when I got that phone call. And Jon courageously challenged me. I want everybody, I'm going to be direct because the world needs more of this direct sometimes. Find something from this episode today with Jon that challenges you where you need challenge in terms of your thinking. Whether it starts with God, I mean, you can tell this heart is fueled by passion in God. I mean, it's even more intense today than it was when you led me to accepting Christ in 2008. And so whether it's your relationship with God, maybe it's making that stronger, it's one of these other areas. I think we have to want change for ourselves, be courageous enough to make that change, and then to win just one day at a time, one relationship at a time, one conversation at a time. And I'm so blessed that you're in my life, and I appreciate you. I love you, and thanks so much for coming onto the Burn and spending some time with us, Jon.
Thanks, Ben. And I just want to say in finality that definitely be aware of the media. The media will actually create a division. And so you have to be careful of that as well. You have to see how they'll actually show things, create things that will then create a divide. And so I wrote a book called The Garden. I want to encourage you to read The Garden. It comes out at the end of June. And The Garden is about the 5 Ds that will sabotage us as a family, as a team, personally, and as a community. And if we allow those 5 Ds to take hold, it will lead to defeat in a team, divorce in a marriage, destruction in a soul, and also in a community. So we got to be aware, we got to really be aware of those 5 Ds and how they play out. And once you understand these 5 Ds, you'll start to see how different people are actually being divisive and what they're doing and how they're doing. And you won't take the bait of hate. Instead, you'll plant seeds of love that will create an amazing harvest. So I want to encourage you, read The Garden. I really think it will give you the perspective that you need to change your own heart and also see things differently, but also to be very wise to understand how the battle is being waged. Because once you see it, you will then be able to overcome the battle. Ben, so many people are in a battle and they have no idea they're in a battle, but your enemy does. And if your enemy knows you're in a battle and you don't, that's why you're getting your butt kicked. You got to know you're in a battle. You got to see how the enemy wages it. Then you can create a counter plan, and that counter plan will allow you to win. And God gives us the plan, and I wrote about that. It's how you win the battle. And once you do that, you'll be victorious.
And I gotta plug one thing, which is right over. It's to my left, over your ear. There is Training Camp. And it's my favorite book that you wrote. And I think for what you just said, I think everybody got to take yourself into Training Camp, get The Garden, get Relationship Grit, but those aren't out until later on in June. So if you need the reading now, any of those books on the wall, but Training Camp was my favorite. And I think for all of us, sometimes you got to go to Training Camp, you got to stay uncomfortable, and you just have to take that positive action. So Jon, thank you so much for being you And I'm always in your corner, brother. I appreciate you so much.
Thanks, brother. I love you, man.
Love you too.